I've had a great day today, Phil, because I went to work and then realised that I wasn't working today, which was quite good. So it's been a typically wonderful Tuesday for me, and especially because we get to talk about Rugby
productive. League. Yeah, very productive as always, no doubt.
Well, I did go, I mean, accidentally, because of that, I did go to the Castleford press conference, so that was even better.
Oh, good.
That's my dog.
How was it? Hello, dog.
It was all right.
What did you learn?
There was a line from Lee Radford about, he was asked, did he think about appealing George Lawler's ban? And he said, no, because I couldn't come up with a reason, which I thought was a good answer. He said there was another tackle in the game or something which was similar, which wasn't penalised. But then he said, you can't really go, well, I've murdered someone, but they've murdered somebody as well. So, yeah. I mean, I don't know what grading murder is, probably an E. But and I asked him about if he remembers the 1986 final, because he's a whole KR fan, isn't he?
Well, he is.
And they played Cass in 86, and I checked to see if he was alive, and he was, because he's older than me. Because when Niall Levels was on beforehand, he wasn't alive in 1986 when Castleford last won at Wembley. But Lee Radford didn't watch it either. So he was playing with wrestling figures, apparently.
The Jamie Sandy final.
So 1986, all those years ago, when Castleford last won at Wembley. Of course, I've no room to talk because Wakefield haven't won at Wembley since 1963. And they play Wigan this week in a repeat of that final, which no doubt the BBC will drag out the black and white footage, if it's still around, of that final, which no one remembers because Wakefield won and no one missed any goals or anything. So,
I think there's a try by Neil Fox, which is on. It's still available on YouTube. That will no doubt be endlessly replayed. It was a very good occasion, I think.
Is it the final where he kicked loads of goals, or was that the one against Hull?
That was Hull, I think.
Hull, yeah. He's got loads of points. You can probably read about some of them on the Rugby League Record Keepers Club, but not all of them yet because they've only done the summer era, just to please Sky, I guess. What's the news this week, Phil? Apart from Leeds are still in crisis, I did enjoy Sky's graphic before the game on Friday with all the potential coaching candidates, which appeared to be anyone with a pulse in Rugby League. They put Wayne Bennett on there, so obviously they've been listening to this podcast.
I think the big news is Rob Burrows got his MBE at Windsor Castle today, presented by Princess Anne for, obviously the not just the sensational rugby league career he had, which in my opinion would have been enough to give him an MBE anyway, but the wonderful work that he's done, raising the visibility of MND since and opening his life at its most difficult time so that the world can benefit from it. So looks sensational, as did his gorgeous wife, and I hope they had a wonderful day. I know that BBC TV were recording it. We'll probably see some highlights of it, but really great that Rob was down at Windsor Castle today.
Probably not Princess Anne's favourite number 7 in Rob, because she would prefer Danny Brough, but not that Rob Burrows, but there you go. But it was good. It was good. And good to see him get the thing, and Kevin Sinfield got his as well before, hasn't he? Because I saw the Royal family tweeting about that. So good to see our most recognisable people in Rugby League recognised at the highest level it can possibly be. And of course, the fundraising continues, and all Rob and his cohorts' great work continues in trying to find some kind of cure or whatever can be for people with MND and make their lives easier. And there are no words left to say how much credit these people deserve to be given for all the efforts and work they've done selflessly. I can't come up with words anyway.
No, and I do think that we need to keep that in perspective, and we'll talk about teams that are on losing runs and coaches that are under pressure, but for me that will always be first and foremost the story of the day. I think the second one is clearly because Rugby League is now on Channel 4, it's been put up for sale. Can we
put a bid in?
Amazing, isn't it?
Does this count as running a TV channel?
Yeah, 3 months of show in Rugby League, and all of a sudden it's going to go to the highest bidder who'll say, oh, don't want that Rugby League, it doesn't bring enough money in. We'll have, I don't know, whatever it is, Malteser marbles or whatever.
The complete lack of understanding of how things work in government is not incredible at all, because we all know they're thick. Can I say that? Was that allowed? Well,
Yeah.
we're not under the same rules as normal broadcasting. We can't say
I
anything
think-
because there's elections coming up. But
I think when you're referring to Nadine Dorries, that's an apt adjective.
she knows what rugby league is, though, apparently. So as we learned at the World Cup thing last week. But never mind. And then there's another positive from the week. The World Cup created by grants are open again. So if your local community club needs to get some stuff done, get involved. You could get some money to improve your lots. And while the government have given us this money, let's make sure we use it for the greater good and actually have a legacy as opposed to the Olympic legacy in Sheffield, which
And it's the smaller grants as well. So if you need equipment, cones or balls or whatever, then that's the sort of sum of money that I think every club will benefit from. And apply if you need to update certain bits and pieces, do so. And I think the bigger grants, that scheme is now finished, ended up at £20 million, which is absolutely phenomenal. I think 5 more than they'd originally planned as well. So we were at a World Cup event. I can't even remember when it was. I know it was a Monday, probably a week last Monday.
It was.
We were continually again impressed with what they're rolling out. That although some of the people have changed, as was always going to happen when it was staged a year later than was originally planned, I just think that the work that they've done to save it, enhance it, and now I think we mentioned it briefly last week. Bring on more commercial partners, and details of the PDRL World Cup will be out soon. Great to see that season up and running again this weekend. I think there was some really good festivals from what I gather. One at Eastmoor, where Warrington, Wakefield, and Leeds and Bradford were part of it, and the reports back are that everybody who was involved in playing had an absolutely fantastic time. And again, that's the reason for it. And we talk about inclusivity, and that is something that we can definitely point to and say PDRL starting up again is great news.
Yeah, but I mean, predictably, when we talk about inclusivity, some idiots online thinking that the RFL signing the Muslim Athletes Charter is some kind of ridiculous thing and we're now under Sharia law or something, but those people are idiots and I expect to be voting for them at the next government elections whenever they come around. I mean, there's no bad news about trying to welcome as many people into the sport as possible, and I'm sure if there was a athletes charter from whichever religion you want to name, then I'm sure we'd sign up for it as well. It's just, well, it is.
I think it's fantastic as well that one of the things that they're doing as part of signing up to that charter is giving out Ramadan boxes to players, and I think again just an appreciation of what Muslim players need to go through at the time of Ramadan to remain professional sports people when they're fasting, and to give them what they need to get the best they can out of that period and observe all of the things that they need and want to do. It's fantastic, and the fact that we're now part of that, hats off to the RFL for that. I know that Ben Aberstein, who is the new diversity lead, was keen to get involved in that, and he made a significant difference down at Brentford FC, and hopefully he can have the same sort of influence in that department in Rugby League as well. So nothing but praise for signing a Muslim charter, and hopefully as we look around the grounds in years to come, there'll be more players and more spectators feeling that Rugby League is a welcoming environment, which is what we're all about and what inclusivity actually means.
Indeed. I mean, I would have gone down on Friday to the launch, but I was working, unfortunately. And one of the things that, the great thing about my current work is that A, I hardly do any work, and B, I have to do my own taxes. That's not good. But when I did have a proper job, I worked in a bed factory in Batley, which was my first job after university, because obviously media students have to go and work in bed factories in customer services. Took 100 calls one day once. That was good. It's like a Neil Fox record, that. But working in Batley, obviously, high percentage of people in our factory were Muslim, as they were in our office part, because you don't just make a bed. I can't even make a bed actually with sheets. But the best thing about Ramadan was when it finished and everyone came around with loads of food. And I do miss that. So those mushroom bardies that were made, especially for me because I didn't like onions, very, very nice. I miss that. But that's off on a tangent. Apparently, there's no press for it at Hull KR now, I'm told, but that's still preferable to the Hull FC soup. I learned on Sunday. So that's the positives and negatives of the world.
But they did have a sellout at the Sewell Group Stadium, as I believe it's now called, when they played Warrington and soundly beat Warrington this week, and another sellout due for the derby. So good times at Hull KR at the moment.
Yeah, speaking of crowd, 7,000 at Cast. They did a lot of promotion ahead of the Toulouse game. Obviously, not expecting any away fans, so they did plenty of work there and got 7,000 there. That's good, and they've had big crowds all season.
70s night at Cast, which leads to the inevitable question, and I am sorry, but everybody will say it. How did they know?
Interestingly, Wakefield had 4,371 against Salford, which was similar to the number the week before against Toulouse. So maybe Wakefield fans just thought, nah, not going to bother this week. We'll stay home. Don't know, was anything on telly on Sunday? I don't know.
It was the only game on Sunday, and I know we're going into the cup period and the Easter period, and teams are wanting to play games sort of earlier. But why did we have so many matches last Friday night? And if I was Sky, I would be saying, look, we've got a big game on. Well, St Helens are always worth watching. Not so sure about Leeds at the moment, but no, historically, big game, big rivalry. All guns blazing. To have that on our television screens, we really don't want 3 or 4 other games being played at the same time. Silly.
No, it doesn't make any sense, does it? But nothing seems to. Should we try to think of anything else that's happened off the field? But things like talk about
we welcomed Cornwall to the fold. Officially.
Yes, Cornwall and Midlands played their first home game of their new regime as well. So it's been a good weekend for new beginnings.
And the two meet each other this week. Cornwall's first home game. I
didn't watch all of the Cornwall game, but scored 22 points. Obviously started off slowly against a very good North Wales side. And we'll see them on Sunday. It's on our league at 1 o'clock. Oh, look at that. It finishes just in time to watch Wakefield and Wigan. Well, almost. So that's a positive. But, we've got to find some positive somewhere because someone will be trying to pull us down over something. And any news on the Leeds coaching thing? Is Mr. Hetherington in Australia now? Is he back yet?
Due to be back, I believe tomorrow was his original plan. It was a 5-day turnaround. I think he was going with specific business in mind rather than just having open interviews with anyone who was interested. I have absolutely no idea who he's seeing. Logic would tell you that he'd be looking at the status of Ryan Carr, who is an assistant at Parramatta, whether he would be allowed to leave, under what terms, would there be any compensation to be paid to the Eels for the rest of his contract, how likely would he be to get a visa, bearing in mind that that situation has probably changed from when he was a coach over here with Featherstone. A lot of speculation over in Australia overnight that he was seeing Shane Flanagan, who apparently had already ruled himself out of the job. So I don't know how that works, but also a rumour which surfaced around about the same time as April Fool's Day that if it was Shane Flanagan, he'd be bringing his son Kyle because Leeds clearly have a halfback problem. I don't know whether there's any truth in that. I do know that Kyle Flanagan has just been picked to play for Canterbury this weekend. So who knows? But I don't know the timescale on even making an announcement. What I suspect is that whilst Leeds would have loved to have been in the Challenge Cup this weekend, it may actually benefit them to not, and Jamie Jones Buchanan to have 10 days with the players and start ironing out some of the issues that clearly he has identified in some of his excellent post-match press conferences, but also there were signs of improvement against St Helens, which sounds ridiculous when you've lost 26-0 at home. But
they showed effort, Phil. They showed effort. That's what they said on the telly. They showed effort.
No, constructive effort rather than just effort. I think effort is a given, but they played with a little bit more passion and confidence. But for a mistimed pass that was intercepted and Tommy Makinson ran the length of the field. St Helens would have won anyway, but the margin would have been less. And I think the fact that the side were cheered off rather than booed off, as they had been a couple of weeks before, just said that some of the things that Jamie Jones-Buchanan is trying to bring in may be working, and that his extra week with them this week will probably benefit everybody.
Too many interceptions. That's been the problem in the last couple of weeks. If it only hadn't been for Greg Eden intercepting the ball, Leeds would have lost by less to Castle the week before. I want to talk about Sunday, because I was out at the game in the Men's Super League for the first time in a bit, in the press box for the first time pre-COVID. And you were at the wheelchair game at Leeds Beckett. You were skillfully photographed. You were in the background, hiding behind James Simpson. How was the game? How was the treble winners, double winners, whatever they won last year? They won everything. I can remember. How was their performance?
Well, again, it's hard to judge because Hull are not at that level at the moment. Although clearly they scored late on, which I think is always a sign when you're heavily behind and you get a couple of tries late on in the game, that not only have you not given up, but your structures are working as well. Even if you do acknowledge that you're playing against a team that have greater talent than you do. As you know, we've talked a lot about the wheelchair game. I absolutely love it. Can't get enough of it. I think the people that play it are astonishing. I think the game itself is so fast and embodies everything that is great about the running game in a court format. The difference was that speed of transition, Leeds going from defence to attack. I think they had a couple of drives early on in their sets of six, but then they had a lot of moves that had clearly been practiced ad nauseam in training, where the movement off the ball and the options that the ball player has mean, and the speed they can capitalise on that. I mean, Nathan Collins scored a couple of absolutely ridiculous tries because of his speed off the mark. Just marked them out, and you could see that there were a team of nearly all internationals playing a side who are making their way in the game. But no, for 80-minute entertainment, in front of a record crowd for the club, in a great facility now at Leeds Beckett University, which is state of the art, and had other sports people who were there at the time coming in to watch the game. It was brilliant. I thought the whole game really summed up by the performance of Jodie Ann Boyd-Ward, who had gone to hospital the week before, bruised ribs and a potential broken hand. I was told that she wouldn't be playing much this week to help her recovery. Told them that she would be. Came off the bench and was just sensational. Scored 5 tries and was involved in everything that was good about Leeds. So no, it's just a great afternoon. And all I would say is it doesn't matter who you support if you get the chance to go and see a wheelchair game. And one of the other things that was announced this week was clearly they will now have a mid-season international against France in Manchester, where the World Cup final itself will be held. I think there's at least another running game international to be announced later this week, which will take place at the same time as England are playing the Combined Nations All-Stars. So I think, again, getting all of this domestic action is leading into what we're going to be seeing at the end of the year. And it's the same with the women's game at the moment. I know there's some blowout scores in some of the matches, but we just need to know more about these players that are going to be playing in the World Cup.
Halifax, the team to keep an eye on in the Wheelchair Super League at the moment. 3 wins from 3. They beat Warrington 104-34, Leeds 114, Hull 24, and North Wales 54. Wigan 92. I'm looking forward to seeing some of the games when they come up on our league and stuff later in the year, because I think, as you say, people need to become aware of these people. And I think I'm more interested in going to Manchester to watch the Wheelchair International than I am making a trip to Warrington. Who wants to make a trip to Warrington? Speaking of the women's game, then here are the score lines from the Challenge Cup, which I think on paper the group stage was a good idea, and it's been probably better for teams to have, I was going to say competitive fixtures, but that's probably the wrong word now. Fixtures with meaning rather than meaningless pre-season games. As it turns out, though, Group 1, Barrow 38, Army 0. So good result for Barrow. Warrington 0, St Helens 54. 42 up at half-time. So I wonder if they took their foot off the gas in the second half. I don't know because I've not seen it. Hull 0, Huddersfield Giants 114. I mean, that is it's not a worrying scoreline because Huddersfield are a team who obviously did well last year in the second division and the whole, well, whatever. Bradford beat Dewsbury, apparently, although it wasn't in the paper. But I can't remember what the score was. Just been more, that is. Featherstone 86, Castleford 0. Hat-trick for Brogan Churn. Told you she was good last week. Cass rebuilding. And Wakefield 12, Alton 14. Now, obviously, that's not a good result for Wakefield because you shouldn't be losing as a Super League side to a team in the Championship. But I can tell you, Alton played very well. Alton. I'm not sure how you pronounce it. But Alton. Oh, that's what I thought, but everyone keeps pronouncing it a different way. I think I only lived, 5 miles away or whatever most of my life. But they played really well, Alton. So well done to them. And they get the plum tie of York away. So good luck to them. Quarterfinals, Saints versus Huddersfield, Leeds versus Warrington, York, Alton, and Fev Wigan, which is the TV game on our league on Sunday. And they've picked the right game there because that should be the closest. And I think Featherstone might knock off Wigan in that one. I think they've got momentum going their way. Didn't mention Leeds because it's in the big panel on the paper at 92-0 over Lee Miners Rangers. So well done to Leeds. Courtney's back. England's Courtney, Winfield Hill.
Absolutely. England's Courtney was apparently very, very good in that game. But I think you're right that, we look at the Challenge Cup and it's all Super League teams in the quarterfinal this weekend. You look at the women's, credit to Alton Raiders. The group stages, if nothing else, have meant that a championship team has made the quarterfinals of the cup. So now again, looking at a game in the wheelchair where there was a clear and decisive winner, Hull weren't disheartened because they knew that they have to play games like that to see the level that they're at, to benchmark themselves about where they want to be, and the experience of playing on the same pitch as those who are current internationals really benefits players, and it's not something that's going to change overnight. In Australia, they have their NRLW grand final this week, and for the first time Brisbane Broncos won't be part of it. I think they've won the previous 3, and up until this weekend when they were beaten in the semi-final by Sydney Roosters, who placed St George, I believe, in the final. They were virtually unbeatable. It takes time, but people aspire to be as good as the best, and you only do that by playing the best. And I think, there was always a problem with this group format, that there were going to be blowout games, because some of the teams are clearly a lot more advanced and have access to a lot more resource than others. But overall, you look at the quarterfinals, it's had the desired effect. And it builds up now to the semis at
Warrington.
Ellen Road, at Warrington, the final at Ellen Road.
I'll go to the final. I don't know if I'm going to go to Warrington. What I will say, speaking of resource, it is the understanding of this programme that an England international will soon be making a move from one of the non-top clubs to one of the top clubs in the Women's Super League. But that's about as vague as I can be. So,
is it somebody who has had a move and might be moving again?
Well, you obviously know the answer to that question. So the answer, the answer is yes. If the sources of this program are correct, then, which is interesting and disheartening. The word I don't know.
I think what you've got to say is it's World Cup year, and if anything will give us a better chance of competing in the World Cup, until there are regulations that say you can't, it's the nature of the beast. It's like Wigan sweeping up internationals in the mid-80s, early 90s, even though they were going to sit in the stand at Central Park, and they would have graced most of the opposition teams that Wigan were playing at the time. The
good thing is about many of these teams, of course, they're full of very young players. Also, especially, I think they're all pretty much junior players, because I assume that the best would get picked off by the Super League teams who were nearby, because 3 of them were in that group and one's not too far down the road and wear similar colours. But I can't give enough credit to the way Alton played. They outplayed Wakefield. I don't know what was wrong with Wakefield on the day, whether it was an attitude or some other issue that they just didn't appear to be at the game. It was bloody cold and windy, so maybe it's that. It only affects people from Wakefield, not all the way. It affected me on the touchline. I wish they'd taken a thicker coat. But yeah, fair credit to Alton. And they replied to my DM when I asked if we could speak to them after the game. So, they won up on some Super League clubs in that sense. And it'll be interesting time for them at York. They get to go play at the LNER Stadium, which is great. And, they're going to be a team to look for in the Championship this year. And I didn't ask the coach if there's promotion or relegation or whatever from the Super League, because I don't think anyone knows. But if there is, then they're an interesting side, aren't they? Because obviously they are very close to another club in Super League, not like the Featherstone Rovers of the Women's Championship, if you will. But I was pleased to see them win, not of course for Wakefield's sake, but they played well. And to beat 2 Super League teams in the competition, that is a good achievement. That was more than a good achievement, and they will be a team to look out for this season. And the Women's Nines is coming. Which is an interesting concept, because again, that's going to be sort of open for the first 24 teams. It's not just restricted to Super League. It's going to be more of a festival, I think, at Victoria Park in Warrington, and from that, the top 6 teams will then play in, you would think, a more competitive environment, because there'll be a trophy at stake. So 24 teams is just an indication of how the game is spreading. I think the great thing about that is I believe Catalan Dragons are coming over with the team. I think there's a team from Ireland coming as well. And hopefully, it'll just be a great jamboree of the best of Women's Rugby League. And it's that nines format again, isn't it? There is a debate as to, do we need it to, appeal to a new audience? Other sports have gone down that road of the shorter format game. It seems to be stalled a little bit at men's, but yeah, let the women take it up. Let them set the template, and I'm looking forward to that. I think that'll be a good couple of weeks. I hope they stick it on our league or something.
I'm sure they will. It was good to see the cameras there on Sunday, because I'm glad they picked a game which was going to be competitive from the start, because they haven't picked great games so far. So I don't think I'm out of line in saying that. And it was good to see Dave Parkinson, and good to see he's got an upgrade on me from the Shield final last year as his expert summariser. An expert, certainly another word you could use for me. I think there's going to be some more movement around in the Women's Super League as well. So keep your eyes out for players moving, and some good players as well. That was after Wakefield put Salford to the sword, and I don't know if it's my medication or my positive frame of mind at the minute or something. I never thought Wakefield were in doubt of losing that game, even when Salford came back in the second half. They won the second half, so they get the bonus Nigel Wood point there. But Tom Johnston, I know we can keep saying this over and over again. I think of all the players I've seen in 30-odd years watching Wakefield, and, Nigel Wright, love him to bits because he, teenager, Yorkshire Cup winner, got the big money move to Wigan. Super talent. Henry Paul, I think the best Henry Paul we saw was at Wakefield, because I'm biased. Gareth Ellis obviously went on to a great career that started at Wakefield. But I don't think there's a player I've seen who, whenever he's somewhere near the ball, people are excited as when they see Tom Johnston. He went off with a back injury at halftime. He was still the man of the match. It wasn't just the tries he scored. It was the one he set up for Jacob Miller, which opened the scoring. How he wasn't in the England squad in the first place is a complete mystery. I don't think anyone knows the answer. Willie Poaching didn't have the answer. Oh, no, he's just got to be more consistent. I'm not sure what more he can do, but I think he's just got to play longer minutes, because we all know that there is a potential issue with recurring head injuries. Hopefully he's over that. He's been through all the protocols. There was a concern when he went off at half-time, not being there, that, again, that might have been an issue, but actually it was just a tight back. No, I think that one of the tries that he scored where he cut back through the middle and went to the post, that was a Fire-esque he used to give Martin Offiah the ball on the wing, and he, because of his speed, he just bust you anywhere that he saw there was a weakness, and he's an excitement machine, isn't he? And the sort of player that neutrals will pay to go and watch. And I think clearly Dom Young is earmarked potentially for Jamaica at the World Cup. I suspect that if he's playing as well as he is at the moment for Newcastle Knights in the NRL, the way these things go is he'll end up being selected by England, which I honestly think is a bit of a shame, because he'd be a star turn for Jamaica. If he is not going to play for England or be in contention, then absolutely Tommy Makinson, always loved him, particularly at international level. I think he's an absolute quality player. You can imagine a wing pairing of Makinson and Johnson, with all due respect to Tom Davis and Jermaine McGilvray and anybody else who maybe Ash Handley wanted to be picked in that position. That is a I think you need contrasting wingers. The great teams have always had the guy who is the absolute flying machine, and the other who can make those hard yards out of your own area, which Makinson does so well. So let's hope come the end of the season, he's won a Challenge Cup with Wakefield, and also being in a World Cup final.
I'm biased. We need to get some headphones to you that don't fall out.
I know. I think
the technical standards of this program are atrocious.
I think the trouble is that when you have your hair cut, you realise that your ears are bigger than you think they are.
The technical standards, we could be taking over Channel 4. You never know. We're going to put a bid in. You have to put a tender in. Dean and Dean. We've got a laptop. I've got a light now. My wife brought me a light back.
Yeah, the only riders we need would be some proper earphones, and I don't know what would we have, dolly mixtures in the green room.
Maybe another camera. I don't know, but yeah, we'll do anything. Well, we'll employ Jamie Jones Buchanan because he's an expert videographer, as we say.
Dolly mixtures.
For those of you who are listening, Phil's got dolly mixtures. Salford have got their injury issues. I think they said Dan Sargent's out for the season, so he can be taken out of the England squad now. But obviously a good comeback from them in the second half. Well, I mean, the great thing about Wakefield is they try things, and as I said before, sometimes they work, sometimes they don't. Although having failed to work the short dropout once, to try it again was a bit foolish, and Salford scored for that. But we won. It doesn't matter.
The only thing I think that's odd at Salford at the moment, and I do think that that there's some really good things going on there, not least with engaging with their fans. They've got a small squad by acknowledgement, but they sent 4 players out on loan last week.
I was when Paul Rowley was in the post-match press conference. That was one of the things that came to mind. Morgan Escaré is a Salford player, but he's. I know the players may not be in the positions they want them to be in or something, but it does seem strange to send an international player out on loan when you're struggling for bodies. But
I think Jack Wells must have about 15 shirts already this season, and to me sometimes it just seems odd that it's very hard to play we've got a small squad card and then be exceedingly generous with the players that you're allowed to. Danny Addy went out on loan as well this week, didn't he? So interesting.
They've got no money anyway, so they can't buy anyone.
Yeah, and clearly some players fit with a way a coach wants to play, and others, when everybody's fit or players in their position are fit, don't. But I suspect those that have been sent out on loan, some will be coming back pretty soon.
They may have to play Morgan Escaré at prop. I don't know, in the second row or something. But we'll see what happens with Salford. I don't really have much more to tell you about that game, other than that it did get cold as the day went on. But Wakefield won. The World Cups were there, which was good. There was an LDRL or SL, I can't remember what we call it, exhibition at half-time, which the crowd seemed to enjoy. 4,500, 4,300. Not the best crowd, not the worst crowd. But the clubs are trying. I think Wakefield are trying to do more things as well.
Yeah, and when the ground starts being redeveloped and people can actually see that there is progress on that front, then again, I think it will rekindle interest. And the more they play like they're playing at the moment, again, that's going to have some commercial value on the back of that. Oh yeah, I think it's a good place at the moment. Again, we've talked about what influence does a coach have, and is it with players when form is not going the way it should. But I just think that the lead has come from Willie Poaching, and that he is the way that they are playing embodies everything that he stands for in the sport, and it's working for them. And long may it continue. They seem to want to play for him, and that is half the battle. And I think there was a story about Warrington perhaps being interested in Tanganoa, and why would he want to move there at the moment? He's in an environment where he's valued. He's in a team that's playing great rugby. He's with a coach that it's clearly got the interests of all the players at heart. Why would he want to leave that to go to a squad at the moment that clearly needs some work doing on it?
Let me tick off Wakefield Salford, so I know we've spoken about that now. And as you mentioned, Warrington, it's interesting because in 2002, when they were threatened with relegation, I'm not saying they're going to be relegated this year, but they went to Wakefield and signed Nathan Wood and Ben Westwood. Obviously, Westwood's one of their probably best signings in the Super League era in terms of longevity and everything he meant to Warrington in that time. They went to Hull KR on Friday, as we mentioned earlier, 10,000 there to see Hull Kingston Rovers, the Harlem Globetrotters, as Sid calls them on Twitter. 34-18 winners, 20 points to 6 up at half time. Comfortable win. Ryan Hall in England contention with a couple of tries. Mikey Lewis, who everyone loves. And
Warrington got there late and looked like they'd remained on the bus for the first 20 minutes. And then Darryl Powell, in his press conference afterwards, said that he wanted to buy a drink for every Warrington fan that had been forced to watch that, and to tell them exactly how he was going to turn it around. So, and I think obviously because of the crisis, there is only one, and there can be only one. A little bit of Warrington has gone slightly under the radar, but that is worrying. To be knocked out of the cup before the quarterfinals for the first time for a while, to lose, so I think it's 5 games on the trot for the first time since 2017. And again, there are parallels with Leeds, to have done some recruitment that they thought was going to make a significant difference, and doesn't yet seem to have done that. You do wonder, what can they do to turn that around in the short term?
Buy players, apparently. Well, the long-term criticism of Warrington over the last 5-10 years or whatever, and yes, they've won Challenge Cups, they've got to grand finals and won the League Shield, but they don't seem to produce enough players through their own system to bring them through to the first team. Now, whether that's true or not, it might just be the argument of choice at the moment to hit Warrington with, but we've had successive coaches now who can't get this team to win a grand final. Obviously, a bit harsh to grade Darryl Powell. Only 6 games into the season, he hasn't got a chance of getting into Old Trafford just yet. Or 7 games into the season, I should say. But it's like Leeds. It's too easy to say, it's all the coach's fault. Well, the coach has gone now, so who are we going to blame now? So at Warrington, we've got to put our finger on the one thing that's wrong, and of course, it's going to be a multitude of things.
Yeah, and I suspect that Darryl Powell is probably learning now why they haven't won grand finals. And it clearly isn't about the individual talent of the players that they've recruited. There may be, like at Leeds, a deficiency in big men. I think, the other week when they played Jack Hughes at prop is an indication that, they haven't got enough big men. There may not be a lot of big men about in the market to go out and buy. I suspect that's part of the issue as well. But I think Darryl will have learned over the first, quarter of the season, the mental areas where his team may be lacking. And he's been saying, 20 minutes is the best he's got out of them in any game so far. And clearly that isn't enough. But as everybody says, and I think it's true, it's at times like this that you learn far more than when you're on a winning streak. And if he can turn it around, and if whoever is coming in at Leeds can turn it around, then the lessons that they're learning at the moment will, particularly the younger players, will stand them in good stead. But yeah, I think there's some concern at Warrington at the moment, just because I think, again, like at Leeds, the expectation with Darryl coming in, particularly with Peter Matauta and Ollie Holmes coming in, who were his men, knew exactly how he would want to play. The fact that it hasn't clicked yet, if you're not a Warrington fan, if you're not a podcast that carries the name Brian Bevan in it, well done, guys, on being so high up the charts. Lots to talk about at Warrington at the moment.
Speaking of the Brian Bevan podcast, they were the first people to point out to me, and I'm going off on a tangent now because it's reminding me. They were the first people to point out that the NRL, which, going into this World Cup, they have clamped down on people playing the ball incorrectly. And we haven't. When it comes to the World Cup, is that going to be something that's going to do us in? Because we've forgotten how to play the ball right. I don't know.
And it's good to see that we're putting moves together off scrums, though, because that's going to be important in the World Cup. I suspect we need to have some communality over what 6 again means when the World Cup comes around, because I don't know what it means here, and I see a little bit of the NRL, and I think not quite the same over there at the moment either.
Everyone loves it when it's given on the first tackle as well. That's always good. But Hull KR, who had a bit of a wobble at a few weeks ago, but now they're 3 wins from 7. So are Wakefield, so are Warrington, so is Salford. So it's contracting in the middle of the table. Perhaps the top 4 just moving the top 2 certainly moving away from everyone else. But yeah, Warrington in crisis. Well, at least they've got a week off this week, so.
Yeah, and I do think that we should pay credit to Hull KR. I think that Lachlan Coote coming back, Sean Kenny-Dowell, who I think this Friday will play his 50th consecutive game, which means he hasn't missed one since he arrived. It's been a massive influence. I'm speaking to Tony Smith this week. He's buoyant by what's happening over there. They bought their own ground, which again is another cog in this jigsaw of moving the club forward. I think that their heritage stuff is fantastic. They've got a grant for that. They're putting out some great videos. Why are they getting 10,000 people turning up at matches? A, because they play good rugby. B, because they're giving the fans a great experience with Craven Street. I think they deserve a huge amount of credit. Be a really, really interesting Challenge Cup quarter final on Friday, Hull KR Castleford, because whoever wins that might genuinely think that there is a place at Spurs for them this year.
I'm going to have to listen to that one on the radio because I don't have Premier.
And the last time they played, it went on for 100 minutes, which Tony Smith said was cruel.
Cruel. Let's talk about Castleford then, because again, they've been getting good crowds. They've only won 2 games all season in the league, that is, and the other one, well, the most recent was this week against Toulouse, 32-6. Haven't seen the highlights. 20-0 up at half time. They won. Well done, Cass. Well, again, 7,000 there is another good crowd.
I think the interesting thing about that is confidence is something that everybody talks about, but nobody can define. And from the way they played against Leeds in the Cup, they've taken that form straight into their next game against the Toulouse side, who had just beaten St Helens. So I think the magnitude of that win is great credit to Castleford. That was a potential banana skin. That was almost saying to Lee Radford's team, you've had one great performance. That may or may not turn your season around. We'll only know that if you can back it up. They backed it up. So no question whatsoever. I think that's a really good win for Castleford. And they clearly are confident, and they had some players back as well. I think he said in his press conference, you were there, that he's got no real injury worries this week. He's going to be picking from strength. When everybody's fit, they're entertainers. They've scored 60 odd points in the last 2 games, so they won't be going to Hull KR with any fear. That is for sure.
Greg Eden, has he got any other? Can he play for anyone else in the World Cup other than England? You'd be thinking that people will be checking because he's had a great start to 2022.
What's he got? Something like 8 tries in the last 5 games. Phenomenal return. But he is another one, a bit like Tom Johnson, that when he gets the ball, something is going to happen. It's not just pace. I think he's got this ability as well to just spot where a defensive line is weak and exploit it. He's been really good at that over the last 3 or 4 weeks.
I think that's the tie of the round. I know that seems a strange thing to say when Catalans versus Saints is a repeat of the grand final, and I just think that one's going to be a fascinating game on Friday night, but we'll see what happens.
I think Catalan Saints is a really interesting game because when they played each other in round one of the season, that was the tester for Catalan. What have you learned from the grand final? How far have you come? Can you match it with the team that clearly is the best team in the league? And on that night, they didn't. That's been their real blip performance this year. To get the chance to avenge that at home, I think we'll learn a lot about the Dragons this week. Again, they've got players now starting to come back after suspension. They've got Artur Morg, who may not play, but is apparently fit to be named in the squad. Massive, gives them something absolutely, completely different, like the Johnsons and the Edens. It's just a player that you want to see on the field, whether you support the team or not, because he's so exciting. Could do anything when he's got the ball in his hand. So yeah, I think that is the best game. I'm glad it's on. Not only the BBC, but apparently it's on terrestrial television in France as well, which is something of a breakthrough. And because it is a repeat, the grand final, it is a repeat of last year's Magic Weekend. It is a repeat of week one. I think there's a lot of great narratives. Saints going out on Friday rather than doing the fly in on the day of the game, fly out again. Did that in Toulouse clearly, and it didn't work for them, which is not to detract from anything Toulouse did, but they're going that extra day to make sure they're properly prepared. It's fantastic. I'm really looking forward to this game.
And the Catalans will need to bounce back because they were beaten by Huddersfield on Friday. They turned up late as well. They had a bit further to travel than Warrington, though. 28-12 win for the Giants, who are now third in the Super League table, going above the Giants, going above the Dragons, rather, thanks to that result. Huddersfield have kind of been going around, going slowly up the table without anyone noticing them. So another good result for Ian Watson's men. The process is working down at the John Smith Stadium.
But I think, again, he's keen that the process allows you then to play. And it isn't just process. So they are becoming a very attractive team to watch. They've, again, have got some players playing really well in key positions. I think Danny Levi's been a great acquisition for them at hooker. I think they're just quietly going to go about their business. That they again play Hull in the Cup, which is a repeat of the game that was 2 or 3 weeks ago that Hull won. And I think Huddersfield will have learned a fair amount from that about what they need to do. They need to be physically strong up the middle to counter to Hull's threat. And you're not going to get a lot of chances in a cup tie, so you've got to take them. Which again, I think they felt that game they'd made a couple and not converted them. That you don't have that luxury in the cup, but nobody's talking about Huddersfield having a chance to get to Spurs, but they've got the ingredients to do that. They've got a coach who took Salford there, which nobody expected. So I won't back against Huddersfield at the moment, and that's with all due respect to Hull, who I think again have picked up the pace. They look like they were having a bit of a lagger a few weeks ago. I thought they were really good at Wigan last week and unlucky to lose. They again scored some absolutely fabulous tries, beautifully created. Luke Gale is back, who clearly is very important for them. But I still think that Huddersfield are a very good outside bet to get to the final.
Well, I tipped them in the last round to win it, so I hope for their sake I can put the Mockers on it. And not the best attendance on Friday, but they are a club who are trying. They're doing the, here's some street food and stuff, and trying to get people down there. It's just the people of Huddersfield just appear to be completely apathetic. So I don't know what they can do. Having won a League Leaders Shield, got to finals or anything.
Yeah, I don't know if that'll change when the football season finishes, because again, I think there is a little bit of a crossover. The shared stadium. I think Huddersfield Town are the potential playoff candidates in that division. Yeah. So clearly there's if there is people who would go and watch both at the moment, but we're all under the same pressures of the cost of living going up, then. They may be waiting to go and see the Giants once the football season is finished. But no, it's a great facility. They're learning how best to use it. They've got some new commercial sponsors on board. Clearly, I think the investment in Ian Watson and what he can bring to that team is now starting to pay off. Some of the players who are no longer just young players, but local players are coming through and making an impact. So yeah. No spotlight at all on Huddersfield last year. It's starting to work this year. I just hope if St Helens are flying out, even on Friday that they added an extra 5 hours for the check-in at the airport.
They're from Manchester, dear. Wigan, as you mentioned, beat Hull 1918. He's where Hull have won on that deal, where Sneyd went to Salford and Gale went to Hull. He's Gale 3 from 3 on his return. Mark Sneyd 2 from 5 on Sunday, although admittedly the Salford players didn't give him the easiest of kicking attempts with his goals. Still,
Gale couldn't land a field goal, could he, when it was 18 all? Whereas you suspect Sneyd probably would have done because that's what he does.
But it was a win for Wigan by the points. Dryfield again.
Entertaining game.
Yeah, it was a good.
Very entertaining game. A good crowd again, just short of 10,000 on Thursday night, which and then the M62, I believe, was a pig. I think we're allowed to call it for the travelling fans. But just an enjoyable game as a neutral. You didn't know which way it was going to go. So I think I have to pay huge credit to Morgan Smithers and Liam Farrell for even getting Wigan to the point of the field where Harry Smith could do what he'd done against Toulouse. Some absolutely long busting runs when they needed to get out of their own half and near enough for the drop goal to go over. And those are the sort of plays that don't normally get recognised, but Farrell's in particular was outstanding.
Congratulations to Luke Menzies, who made his WrestleMania debut on Sunday. They were supposed to be on Saturday, but they ran out of time. So he had his fight on. So he's called Ridge Holland now, which is a typical Yorkshire name, of course. 50-odd thousand people there, unless you believe their inflated crowd figures. So probably the biggest crowd he's ever performed. And he won. So well done, Ridge. Leeds 0 and Hellas 26. Well, Leeds tried because that's what they said on the telly. They put some effort in, which suggests that they didn't try against Castleford the week before, which is always a strange thing to accuse a professional player of doing. But Saints are a really good team, and they won 26-0. It was 8-0 at half time. They had to work hard for those points in the first half after Hurrell and Meganson had that quick enough start to the game, but. They had to fight for the points after that.
Yeah, it may sound like sort of a bit of clutching at straws, but to keep St Helens scoreless for 45 minutes when defence has clearly been an issue this year, that was a commendable effort, I thought. Again, Leeds haven't solved their discipline problems. They made some positional changes. Hard to do that in a couple of training sessions and expect it to be that effective. I just thought for St Helens, John Bennison again is another example of when your system is right, you can bring a young kid in, play him out of position because he is a fullback as opposed to a winger, and he was outstanding. The try that he helped set up for Lewis Dodd, just brilliant. They're a joy to watch, St Helens. They are the most well-oiled of machines. They did it without Walmsley and Regan Grace. Clearly, they had, I think, other gears they could have gone up to if they needed to. So, having suffered a setback at Toulouse, nilling an opposition, getting back to that average of, I think, apart from that Toulouse game, 1 try a game that they've been conceding. Their horse is well and truly back in the race. Not that they're ever out of it.
I caught the end of the 1995 Charity Shield on Sky the other morning because it was randomly on, and it's better than watching Good Morning Britain. And Alan Tate afterwards described Wigan as a machine, and that's what St Helens are in this one. Leeds had a place enough in that Charity Shield. They did
discipline. Early on. Marcus Vasilakopoulos.
Yeah.
But that was the game played at the Dublin Showground after the Irish Horse of the Year had been on the night before. It's safe to say there were some divots and there were some players looking around, just checking what they were falling in as well.
It's like when Leeds United lost the cup final, drew the cup final in 70 against Chelsea, blamed it on the Horse of the Year show, and then lost the replay.
I have to say that I was fortunate to be in Dublin that weekend. And apart from getting a wonderful interview with Hugh McGann, who was there before Dean Bell took over, an absolute gentleman. Had the honour and the pleasure of sitting next to Tony Ward in the press box. You're probably too young to remember, but Tony Ward was one of those Ireland Rugby Union standoffs who we all thought would have made it fantastically in the league game. and he was there because he was a correspondent of one of the Irish papers on rugby, and was just so enthralled by what he was seeing, even though it wasn't even a close game. So complimentary about rugby league and how he would have loved to have played it if he'd have got the offers. And it was great company in the press box that afternoon.
Leeds lost that day and they lost this week. And there's nothing more we can add about Leeds in crisis or whatever, because until there's a new coaching and until anything changes on that scale, Leeds are kind of in a holding pattern for the moment. And who knows how quickly this appointment will come. Yeah.
Well, they've got some really important games coming up. I think it's Huddersfield, Castleford, Toulouse, which is going to be massive, and Hull KR. So, depending on whether the new coach can start straight away, which is by no means a given, then they're in an interesting run of fixtures, most of which are at home. I think only the Cas one is away. And I think you'll know after those matches whether they're on an upward curve or the hole that Jamie Jones-Buchanan refers to is getting slightly deeper.
Rivals round coming up. They get Lewis Forsell in charge. They're unbeaten this
year. James Simpson and Lewis Forsell as a partnership.
Yeah, that would.
They can coach.
Yeah, it annoy people as well, which is even better. That's all from Super League. In the Championship, Batley Bulldogs ended the great start to the season for the Barrow Raiders by beating them 30 points to 18. Well done, Batley.
Great result for Batley. That really is a big result.
We were discussing who people wanted to see going up from the Championship, and people were saying, "Well, it's Batley or Barrow, just none of the other teams, just anyone different." Featherstone beat Sheffield 44-18 at Sheffield's half home. Halifax 46, Whitehaven 24, Lee 44-0 over Dewsbury. That was on Friday night. And again, we're competing with ourselves because that was on our league and you had to pay for that one. I wonder with our pricing. And I know this seems a strange thing to say. It was a £5 before the day and £10 on the day. But some Scottish football clubs now are charging 18, 20 quid for a feed. The Ice Hockey I mentioned before, 15 quid. I don't know if we're too cheap, perhaps. I don't know. I mean, granted, Lee Dewsbury you're only going to watch if you're a fan of one of those two teams, but a £5 seems cheap with that captive audience. I
think there's something else that I was discussing this morning with that Premier and Channel 4 commentator. What's his name? Wilson.
Oh, yeah, Wilson. I've heard of him. Yeah.
Yeah, I was talking to him today about the fact that they've got 2 Challenge Cup games on this weekend. You should be able to pay for those games. The initial offer that was money off if you bought a season ticket during the first or a digital pass during the first month, that's not available anymore. But there will be some fans who follow maybe Super League and not so much the Championship who would have looked at the certainly Huddersfield and Hull, interesting game. Hull KR Cast, you've already said, could be the game of the round. They're on Premier. You should be able to pay your £10 to watch just those games. Are we missing a trick? Are Premier missing a trick? Yes, probably. Again, there is, there's 10 games of NCL going to be on our league. There's going to be more wheelchair, more PDRL, LDRL, but it all seems to be on at mixed times, and we're all, as you say, this ability to compete with each other is detracts from what we're trying to do. There's a huge cost in putting all of Cornwall's games on. Not saying there isn't interest there, but should we have gone for all of them? I get the first one, I get their first home game, I get a couple of games in the middle of the season, maybe where they're playing teams around. But if they do get relatively heavily beaten every week, why are people going to tune into our league to watch them? So yeah, I think you're right. I think we've all spoken about this a lot since our league was brought into existence. It is great the number of people that are prepared to log on to it, but I'm not sure it's cost effective at the moment.
Well, I assume it costs the same to put on Lee versus Dewsbury as it is for Wakefield Trinity Women versus Alton Raidettes, and it is for Cornwall versus Midlands. So why are we charging for one and not the others? Now, granted, I know there's a good reason why you wouldn't charge for the other two, but it's just odd. It's just odd. And if you are charging for, why not have more games available for people to pay to watch? Why just ad hoc games here, there, and everywhere? But again, it's not a criticism of the quality of the product. It's just a lack of understanding of why we do things some ways and not the other. London nearly beat Bradford, but didn't. 8-6 to Bradford in the end, having been 8-0 up at half time. So
that again, I think is, London have had a draw away at Barrow and now pushed Bradford very close. League table doesn't look great for London at the moment, but you would hope that maybe they're showing signs of a revival under Jermaine Coleman, who let's face it, did change almost his entire playing roster. They've moved to a new ground, which again for your first few games gives you no advantage whatsoever because it's as new to you as it is to the opposition. There is a lot said about the value of London to the sport. There is a lot that's been said over the last 40 years. There's a genuine feeling that if London were to either get relegated or to slip out of the upper echelon of the championship, that it'd be very hard for them to come back from that. So I think I would like to see London, improve and make a contribution to the sport. I think it feels the same about Newcastle. They had a really good win last night against Widnes and have now won 4 of their 7 games to, I think, move to within the playoff spots. I just think the sport, if we're being honest, needs places like London and Newcastle to succeed for the benefit of all of us.
Yeah, I've mentioned ice hockey plenty of times in the however many years we're doing these programs in various places, and they don't have that team in London. They had one, but it disappeared a long time ago. I wonder if that's part of the reason why they don't cut through in terms of media. Basketball has teams in London and gets a higher profile, despite the fact 8,000 people at Sheffield for the big game against Nottingham on Saturday, and no one knows. It's a strange one.
I think netball's the same. They've got a couple of London-based teams, and it's almost like it's easier to promote a sport. It's easier to get a deal to have it on television. Women's football, it wouldn't quite necessarily be the same without Chelsea and Arsenal. You wouldn't imagine a Super League without those names in it. So yeah, I do think that whilst there may be some antipathy from some people again to the word expansion, this isn't expansion. We've been doing it now consistently for 22 years. We just have not 42 years. We just have not been doing it very well.
Maybe London could buy a leopard print and that might attract people. Warrington 18, York 44. Good win for York. They're third in the table now, just behind Fev and Lee, who are the top two.
Bit of a wobbly start because they played Fev and Lee, but again, York now looking to be the kind of side that I think James Ford would want them to be.
League One is back, and it was back for a second week. Keighley 26, Doncaster 6, Midlands 16, Swinton 54. First game for Midlands at home. 478 there.
The craft beer went down very well,
and again,
they had donuts. I was sent a picture. They had a donut stand. We have to go.
This is what's going to get people in. It's
got me saying I'll be down.
You have to sell to people who are new to something completely different as an experience, and then the rugby's an add-on. That's what worked in Toronto. When me and my wife went to the NFL, she loved the donuts. I don't know if she enjoyed the game or not, but she enjoyed the donuts. No, she didn't enjoy the game.
You can't beat a donut.
No, they were expensive Wembley donuts as well, so that was bad. North Wales 62, Cornwall 22. We mentioned that in passing earlier. Cornwall's kit, interesting colour, turquoise, the away kit.
With no sponsor on the front yet.
No.
Yeah, I'm sure they have got a sponsor and it will go on the front. But interesting, it's a long time since I've seen pictures of a game where you didn't have loads of writing over the front of the shirt.
Sponsorship is going to be a hot topic because if you look at darts and you look at snooker and they're moving away from a certain set of sponsors and bringing in new sponsors, I think it would be very wise of our sport to be courting those who are involved in the World Cup. Now, not all of those global brands are going to want to sponsor League One or the Challenge Cup or whatever, but we need to find some money from somewhere soon because eventually everything's going to change, and I think everyone is fairly aware of that. West Wales 12, Rochdale 52. So West Wales obviously scored some points this week. That's good. Tight enough at half time, but Rochdale ran away with things in the second half, which I guess is kind of a bit like if you have a Super League team against a Championship team in a cup tie, isn't it? You expect a team with more experience and perhaps higher, well, they've been together longer, Rochdale, than West Wales have in terms of building up to the season. So not an unexpected result, but at least some signs from West Wales. And a good comeback from Hunslet, 16-4 down at half-time, drawing 22-all in the game at the South East Stadium. Hunslet 22, Oldham 22. So a first draw of the League One season. And good comeback from Hunslet in the second half.
A mighty Swinton, top of the league, Mr. Kellner.
The shirts down. So the League One fixtures this week. London play North Wales on Saturday afternoon, and on Sunday it's Cornwall versus Midlands on our league at 1 o'clock. Doncaster
worth
Swinton,
watching. I would say worth watching.
Have that on, and then put the BBC on in the background, depending on who was on the panel in case you want to mute it or not. Oldham West Wales and Rochdale Hunslet, obviously the Alan Kilshaw derby. Still don't know why it's called Killer.
That would be a good game.
But not on our league or anything. Challenge Cup, Hull Cass on Friday. Watch our non-exclusive interview with Lee Radford on YouTube now. Catalan Saints and Huddersfield Hull on Saturday. Wakefield Wigan on Sunday. Draw being made at half-time in the game. Do it afterwards.
Half-time, and I think there's the women's draw after the game, isn't there? Because their matches are taking place during that afternoon, and the last one's at 6 o'clock.
Yeah. I'm not going to a game on Sunday. I'm going to watch on the telly, I think. And also on Saturday, it's the 1895 Cup playoff, big game. Sheffield versus Whitehaven at the Millennium Stadium in Featherstone. Haven't mentioned him yet, which I should have done because we spoke about the game earlier. The great thing about James Roby is, and we said this before on this programme, is you don't often notice him because he just does his job. He's been a consistently good player for 500 games. And you can't value on a player who just does what they're supposed to do and consistently is a score and save 7, 8, 9 out of 10 player every week. And that's what James Roby is. And the great thing for Saints is they appear to have his replacement learning under him at the moment. So and they're going to have to put another statue up, aren't they? They can't not have put a statue up now.
I mean, the two amazing facts is that, St Helens have had, 2 number 9s over 30 years? I mean, that is ridiculous. Rumours that because he's playing so well and is making such an impact that he may be tempted to play for England in the World Cup, even though he announced his international retirement. Well, again, with Josh Hodgson likely to be out because he's had reconstruction surgery on his knee, who wouldn't want James Roby in that England squad? And who knows, would he go out having played in a World Cup? Could he be tempted to have just one more year? From what I saw on last Friday night, he is still the epitome of every hooker. He has all the qualities. He reads the game magnificently. His runs out of dummy half on Friday night were pinpoint. He just times when to do it to perfection. He can play it loose forward when Lossick comes on if he needs to. I think you're right. There are certain players who we've seen throughout our careers that because they are 8 or 9 out of 10 every week, that's the expectation. So you only either notice them when they score 12 tries and they're a 10, or they miss a tackle and they're a 7. So he gets taken for granted, but doesn't want any fuss. Didn't really want to be interviewed about his 500th game. Let everybody else speak about how important he was. Just a magnificent ambassador for the sport and a wonderful athlete, and the guy that every St Helens player talks about as being the lead in training. And if he's still doing that at the age of 402, it's just amazing. Isn't it?
I know. I can't remember who said it on TV last week. The key as a coach is to move players on before they are not as useful as they were. But it would be very hard for Mr. Wolf and Mr. McManus and everyone involved at St Helens to not want to keep James Roby around for another year if he wanted to go around for another year.
Absolutely. I mean, I don't know what he's got planned for his future life outside of rugby. I suspect he is just so dedicated to the sport that he probably hasn't had too much time to plan what he'll do when he isn't playing anymore. I don't know if he's the kind of player that would want to become a coach. I suspect he could. His knowledge of the game is imperious, but it's not for everybody. So yeah, if he was to be fit and well and able to do another year, be interesting, because clearly his replacement, as you say, is already bought. But if he wanted to carry on, you wouldn't stop him, would you?
Kobe Poaching tweeted, and I retweeted on our account. Do you think we did enough to celebrate the facts? Because that's 500 games in this era is a hell of an achievement.
Well, I think there's two things with that. He's only the fourth St Helens player to achieve that aim, and the other three were in an era where you played a lot more matches. So that's not just a Super League thing. That is historically across one of the most famous and well-established clubs. I think the other thing is, I believe Kevin Sinfield's Super League record of appearances is 521. So all being well, James Roby is going to break that this year. If we don't make a huge deal about that, then again, we talk a lot about stories and telling players stories. He may be reluctant. We need to shout it from the rooftops. I don't think we did. Somebody gave him a shirt, didn't they, out of the crowd with 500 on the back, and he was pictured with that. Yeah, that's not enough.
Yeah, well, Wigan sent a tweet, so they'll probably get a bottle of scotch next time he's at the DW. I don't know where the game is on Good Friday, but it's Nosey Road. I was going to say, yeah,
TWS.
It's not. Don't go on Nosey Road. Don't go there. The game won't be on.
It's not in someone's back garden.
No, I think that's it. I think we're done. It's rivals round next week.
Is it?
Yes, I'm going to go to Headingley on Monday because lots of people are going to be there to speak to, including Tony Smith, because it's going to be his 500th game as a person. So that'll be exciting. I
asked him about that when I spoke to him this week, which you'll be able to read in the new issue of which goes to print at the weekend. And he had some fascinating stuff to say about that.
I mean, I've even started my column for next month, which has a brilliant piece of investigative journalism in. So make sure you buy this month's and then be anticipating what rubbish I've written about next month. But I was going to say, did you see Anton Deck?
I didn't, because that would have meant I would have had to have watched Anton Deck.
Well, I watched it on fast forward because I thought, right, I know what Martin Afire looks like. If I fast forward through, I'll see him and I can stop it. I mean, granted, we're only on for about 10 seconds, but people go, oh, what do you make a big number? It's 10 seconds on one of the most popular programs on TV.
Which 10 million people will watch.
And they throw a rugby ball around and mention the Rugby League World Cup in Newcastle. You can't buy that advertising. Well, you can, but we can't afford it. So they did well again, the World Cup people. Maybe Anton Deck will be there at the first game, maybe they won't be, but the fellow who won the competition, he'll be there. So, and a car and a holiday, and I'd rather go to the World Cup. But
I think they'll be there. 53,000 at St James's Park. I think you put those two down.
Phil, pleasure as always. Enjoy your week, not having to watch Leeds and putting the magazine together.
Maybe the grey hairs will become black again.
Well, that picture they used to use in League Express. Enjoy rugby, everybody. Thank you to all you that comment on YouTube and all the videos. And Emma comments on pretty much every video we do. So thanks, Emma. It's appreciated because apparently it's good for the algorithm, but no one understands the algorithm.
Thank you. I appreciate your support for the magazine as well.
Thumbs up, and we'll see you again at some point next week, but I'm not exactly sure when.